Trials of Osiris is the ultimate pinnacle PvP game mode in Destiny 2. Players from many skill levels tried to test their wits by winning 7 games in a row of 3v3 elimination in order to receive the oh-so-desired loot from the flawless chest at the lighthouse. And while the initial desire to play Trials was quite high when it first launched, it quickly became a place of frustration and resentment when cheaters, DDoSers, and 3-peaking began to surface more frequently. That is, until Season 15. Bungie now has an answer to all 3 of these pain points: DDoS protection, removal of third-person animation from swords and emotes, and anti-cheat. I sent out a poll to my community and simply asked them if they'd be playing Trials when it launches September 10th. The response was quite different than I expected. So because of this response, I wanted to make a guide to help you be more successful in this new era of Trials. If I'm being completely honest, the advice being shared today probably isn't going to be anything you haven't heard before. Some of these are mechanical changes, or things you can physically do when you play. Others are more cerebral and require a bit of a mindset shift. So let's start by talking about what I believe to be the most important concept for Trials, and that is to value your life more than getting a kill. I've talked about this a few times in some of my other PvP improvement videos, but what this boils down to is that the elimination game mode is vastly different from any quick play or 6v6 game mode. In quick play, you're rewarded for being fast, getting kills, and moving around the map. It's much more common to find engagements that are in your favor, with there being 12 people on any given map at any point in time. In elimination, you're rewarded by being the team that has the most players alive. Elimination is a numbers game. As soon as one person gets down, the urgency skyrockets for both teams. The team that just downed someone is going to rush the other team in hopes that they can just outnumber the remaining 2 people, while the other team is frantically trying to set up a defense strategy to pick up their fallen teammate. More times than not, the team that gets the first knock in a round will find themselves in a better situation. And now, with these round times being reduced from 120 seconds to 90 seconds, the time you have to recover is even shorter. Think of it like a pack of wolves circling in on their prey. You rarely ever see one wolf going off on its own to hunt by itself, because if it does, the prey will likely outrun it or outnumber it. The same is for Trials. The moment you decide to go off on your own, a well-organized team is going to call that out and immediately take advantage of you all by yourself. You've then just created another situation where your team is outnumbered. If you're going to take anything away from this video, please let it be this: value your life more than getting a kill. The next thing I want to talk about is something that's a bit more of a mechanical change, which is to make sure you use a loadout and subclass that you feel comfortable with, not just what's the meta. At any given point in time, there will be weapons that PvP players will gravitate towards the most. Now, Bungie will make some adjustments to certain weapons or weapon types to hopefully sway Guardians one way or another depending on what the feedback of the community is, i.e. shotguns and fusion rifles. So a weapon or weapon type will become meta when 2 things happen. It has a fast time to kill, and it becomes easy to use. If a weapon has both of those traits, it will become the meta for the season. However, that does not necessarily mean that you need to change what you are using, because at this point in time, a lot of weapons in Destiny are viable options. For the last few months, I've been mainly playing with the Season of the Splicer auto rifle Chroma Rush and the exotic shotgun Duality. And both of these weapons rank 14th and 48th in usage rate for quick play. By no means are these weapons considered meta weapons, but they are weapons that I enjoy playing with and, more importantly, fit my playstyle. I'm going to be honest, it may take a while for you to come to a place where you feel super comfortable with any one particular loadout, and that's fine. What matters is that the weapons you choose are ones that support how you play. Once you find that, you're going to be good as gold. One thing I do want to make sure I point out though, is that there are situations where you will need to be able to adapt. For instance, you may be really comfortable using the Chroma Rush and the Duality for your loadout, but if the Trials map for the weekend is a map like Widow's Court, where there are really long sight lines with multiple angles, my close to mid-range loadout might not be the best option for that weekend. So ideally, have a few options at your disposal that you can fall back on no matter what the situation calls for. The next concept I want to go over isn't one that is totally necessary, but it could be a solid way to construct your team. And that is to have at least one super that can shut down your opponent's supers. In 3v3 game modes like Trials, supers become even more crucial. One misused super can end up costing you the round or even the match. The same can be said for the other way. A well-placed super could end up shifting momentum in the match to give you and your team the confidence you need in order to make a comeback. In my experience, having a team full of roaming supers almost never serviced us well when we faced a well-coordinated team. Roaming supers are great for quick play, where there are twice the amount of people in a game. But in smaller game modes, a misused roaming super can lead to you being out of position and then putting your team in a bad spot. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should never have roaming supers in trials, because in reality, if you're good at using your roaming super, then by all means stick with what works. Shutdown supers are incredibly valuable, not only because they are really quick to get you a result, but they are also very good at countering. If you're able to counter other teams' movements or supers, you're more than likely going to find yourself winning more games than losing. My suggestion would be to have at least one roaming and one shutdown super, with the third person choosing whichever they feel they're best at. Again, don't jeopardize your capability to use a subclass by trying to create a team full of shutdown supers. It's not going to end well. Understand your team dynamic and choose what will be best for your team. If you've enjoyed the video so far, please consider clicking the like button right under this video. The more likes a video gets, the more YouTube will push it out to other people, so I would really appreciate any support that you guys can give. The next two things are a little more advanced, but if mastered, can really take you and your team to the next level. First, let's talk about manipulating your radar. There's a lot that could go into this section of the video, so instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume that you already understand the basic functionality of the radar. The amount of distance that a radar blip shows, what each section of the radar indicates, different elevation levels, all that kind of stuff. There are some great content creators who already have incredible videos going over this in detail. I'll put a link to their videos in the description down below. What I am going to talk about in this section is how you can utilize radar manipulation within trials. As Destiny players, we are very spoiled. The Destiny radar is the strongest tool that our Guardian has. I mean, it literally shows you where enemies are, whether they are near or far, high or low, or everywhere in between. We've become so reliant on the radar that if it ever gets suddenly stripped from us, we experience a moment of panic. If you've never watched a legitimately good team play trials or 3v3 competitive, I highly suggest you do so. One of my favorite teams to watch is Cakes, Drewski, and Sides. They not only are incredibly skilled players, but they are constantly feeding information to each other. While they are doing this, they are also taking away information that their opponents could possibly give to one another as well. Sides and Cammy are usually sticking together and challenging main lanes, while using lane next to cover strats and calling out exactly what they see. In the meantime, Drewski is utilizing his hunter camo trying to find a secondary angle, while trying to completely stay off the enemy radar. As soon as Drewski, the one who's flanking, gives the signal that he has eyes on the enemy team, he lets the other two know. At that exact moment, all three of them come out of cover like a pack of velociraptors and ambush the enemy team. Cakes kicks it off by using Gemini gestures to take away the enemy team's radar, Sides does Sides stuff, and Drewski picks them off from a distance. They are one of the more well-tuned Destiny teams that I have watched in a very long time. And one of the reasons they are so successful at it is because they manipulate the radar. They eliminate as many different sources of information from their opponent as they can before they decide to engage in fights, and it is incredibly effective. Like I said, we Destiny players have been spoiled from the beginning by having our radar function the way that it does. If you're able to effectively manipulate how the enemy team gets its information about your team, then you're going to have a significant leg up on them throughout the match. The next concept is one that kind of goes hand in hand with the previous one, so I won't spend too much time on it, and that is to coordinate when to peek corners and team shoot. In my previous tip, I described what a really good team does before they start an engagement, and nowhere in it did I say that each of them individually took on more than they could handle. They created a perfect scenario for them to succeed by communicating when they were going to start, and then they just simply executed. In fact, I'm going to bring an additional component to this concept by adding the word communication to it. If you've ever watched any PvP improvement videos, you've probably already subjected yourself to this, but there's a very good reason for it. It's something that is so very simple, yet it has such a massive impact on the outcome of a match. Sure, some teams can skate by on skill, but there's going to be a point in time where communicating accurate information to your team is going to become the #1 thing that's going to help your team win. I mean, it can be something as simple as someone calling out, okay, we're going to peek on 3, 1, 2, 3, and then you'll all appear from around the corner to take on a 3v1. That's how simple it can be, and all it takes is for one person to make that call out to their team. PvP can be as difficult or simple as you make it out to be. Follow one, a few, or all of these concepts, and you're going to start to see more success in Trials of Osiris. I made a few videos recently going over some different builds as well as some optimal stats to run depending on what class you play as. Those videos should be showing up on your screen to click right now. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see ya.